What is going on, ice anglers? My name is John, and welcome to Frozen Lines Outdoors. This is going to be the first video of this series where we're going to talk about ice fishing preparation. If you're a new ice angler, you're a little zygote getting onto that ice, or if you're an experienced ice angler, hopefully you take away something from this video, whether it be, learning something completely new or just dialing in your setup. We're going to talk about some gear, pop-ups, accessories. We're going to talk about tackle, and we're going to talk about rods and reels. First things first, as I hook myself in the finger. First things first, we're going to talk rods and reels, one of the most important aspects of fishing in general. Pairing yourself with the correct rod and reel for the type of fish that you're going out for. So I'm going to just give you a few selections of rods and reels that I think will set anybody up for success on the ice. The first thing to consider when getting out on the ice is what type of fish you're going for. If you're going for panfish, you're going to want more of an ultralight setup with a lighter rod and a lighter rod, shorter reel. Shorter rod, lighter reel. Boom, nailed it. If you're going up for walleye, you're gonna want more of a medium action rod. Longer of a rod, a little bit heavier of a reel. And then once we get up into those Lakers, those pike, sturgeon, you're gonna want a heavy action rod with a big capacity reel. So let's talk panfish first. It's actually an extra ultralight setup. You do not need to go this light, but with that extra ultralight setup, you can see that there is a lot of flex in that rod tip, which personally I like. We all know that those panfish can be finicky, so just being able to feel those taps is I like it. With this setup, I have a inline reel. I've never used an inline reel before. If anybody does have experience with these inlines, I'd like to get your feedback. Leave a comment, let me know what you think of them. I have heard that this paddle that allows you to drop your bait works very well. However, once you start getting into the bigger fish, the drag on it is much less than what we're used to in spinning reels. This is typically what I'm going to use for panfish, a very somewhat light reel and a short light action rod. So moving up in class, this is the rod I want to talk about. This is the Smoke Show. The Smoke Show. This is a walleye setup that I find particularly effective. It's a 37 medium light. It's a graphite rod. And I have that paired with a Stratic. This is a Shimano reel. It's 1000 HG. It does have a slightly larger line capacity. However, I don't think that's necessary when it comes to walleye fishing. We'll talk about line capacity more so when we're talking pike fishing or Laker fishing, because they do tend to go on those runs. And the last thing you need is to run out of line on your reel while you have a big fish on. With that being said, the Smoke Show, it's a medium light action rod. The reason for that, and I recommend that for walleye fishing, is because walleyes will put up a little bit more of a fight. You might get a few of those head shakes. So with that, you want something that will be able to handle those shakes a little bit more effectively, and you'll get that with a medium or medium light action. However, you won't overpower the fish. A little bit larger of a capacity reel, like I said, and also to note that I have a bit higher pound braid on this. I believe this is an 8. I would even consider possibly going up to a 12-pound braid, but 8 pounds should be adequate. Last but not least, this is going to be my setup for big pike, giant Lakers, sturgeon. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it. So that being said, this is the Slugger. This is a 46 extra heavy fiberglass rod, and with it I have a Vanford 2500 HG reel. As I said before, with this heavier action rod intended for larger fish that are a bit more aggressive, I need more line capacity to handle those runs. With this, I do have a bit higher pound braid on this. This is a 20-pound braid. I would even consider going up to 30-pound, which I probably will. And with that, I'll pair them with a fluorocarbon leader. What I've found to kind of make or break your day out on the ice is tackle. Let's talk panfish first. So for panfish, I keep it very simple. I go for weighted jig heads with small plastics or waxies. Sometimes, if I'm feeling a little froggy, I'll put a minnow head on that tungsten as well. Once we start getting up into the walleyes, you have so many options for tackle. Some options that I particularly like to use are jigging wraps, buckshots, wingdings. Really something that the problem with walleye is you might experience different attitudes. So sometimes they might just be a looker, but really it's like, how do we get this looker to turn into a biter, right? That's where different presentations are going to come into play. Sometimes I'll use more of a aggressive presentation to draw fish in, and then I will transition into more of a passive presentation to see if they will actually take that bait. So some of the more aggressive presentations that I personally like are rattle baits. Once I get the fish just looking at the bait, they're eyeing it, but they're not biting it, right? That's where I'll transition. I'll have a rod set up with something a little bit more passive. As we continue getting up into the larger fish, when I go Laker fishing, I'm primarily going to be using tubes and large plastics. For tubes, I would say just bring a large variety of colors because you don't know how those fish are going to react to that color that day. You could go out on a Saturday and they'll hit pink all day, pink, pink, pink. And then you go out Sunday and they're like, I don't fucking care about pink. I want green, dog. So yeah, bring some variety. And then lastly, my absolute favorite, pike fishing. A lot of people dead stick pike. I like to use a Predator rig. It's just a dual treble harness and I usually pop on a Smell, an Alewife, Cisco, and I let it sit. The pike seem to be a little bit more passive in the winter. I like to have a more subtle presentation. So those dead baits have given me really great success. So like I said before, you can pair that with a rattle bait to call that pike in and then have that dead bait just sitting there waiting for them to chomp. Let's move into the next topic. If you're actually getting serious and you're spending some serious time out on the ice, the next thing that you're going to want to consider is investing in a nice pop-up. Now, same thing. I'm not saying you have to break the bank, but what I would recommend is if you know how many people you're going to consistently go out on the ice with, consider the size and then also look into getting a nice insulated pop-up, because as soon as you start to get cold on the ice, you're going to start having a bad time. With the pop-up, we'll talk some accessories, and this is more so quality of life, things that will give you a better time, better experience out on the ice. So first things first, let's talk augers. I would invest in a solid auger, whether that be gas, propane, electric, to each their own. I run a Strike Master. This is an electric auger with a 12-inch blade, well, 10-inch blade with a 12-inch hole. I actually invested in a second battery because last year I was finding out that as I'm traveling along the ice, I'm drilling, 20, 30 holes looking for fish and I'm running out of battery. So I invested in a second battery. Another thing to consider when buying an auger, later in the season, you might run into thicker ice. So the last thing you want to do is spend, 2-3 hours on the road, an hour getting out on the ice, you drill through and you don't hit water. That's a bad time. So an auger extension is a worthwhile investment. The next thing that we'll talk about, you drill that hole, you set your pop-up up, you're ready to fish. Quality of life, strictly quality of life, an ice scoop. You could just get a traditional metal scoop, a wooden scoop, but having something to scoop out your hole will be a game changer. I always bring a metal shovel in my sled when I'm going out on the ice. And the reason for that is I shovel out the spot that I'm gonna set the pop-up on, and then I use that snow to build an insulation ring around the pop-up. Other things we can talk about, tables, a cheap plastic table. Got this at Sam's Club. I also have a $20 fold out Walmart table that works perfectly to put the live scope on or whatever other batteries I'm hauling out there. Just keep in mind now we're talking, okay, you got a shovel, you got a table, you got an auger. The weight builds up fast. Depending on how you're getting out on the ice, just keep in mind the more you bring out, the heavier it is to bring out and the heavier it is to bring back. Other things to talk about. This is an absolute must if you're going to be spending a lot of time out on the ice and it's bitter cold. This is a Mr. Buddy. This is the Big Buddy heater. This is a propane heater. So all I do is I hook up my gas cord to the propane heater. I bring a 20-pound propane tank out. I line it up, I light it up, and in about 5 to 10 minutes, my pop-up is sitting at a wonderful 60-ish degrees. Man, this is fun. I could talk about ice fishing all day. What else can we talk about accessory wise? I know if there is one thing that I would recommend if you're going out setting a pop-up, if you don't bring this out, you're going to be miserable. It's this little fucker. This little piece right here is the best piece of equipment I've spent on ice fishing. This is a drill attachment for your ice screws for your pop-up. I have spent a total of one time out on the ice without that. That's all it took. It was negative 40 degrees, the wind's ripping, and I'm trying to sit there cranking in the screws with my hand. I immediately went to Shields, picked that up, and there is one thing I would recommend. It is this. Get this piece of equipment. So with that, bring a drill. Other accessories that we can talk about. This kind of goes back to whatever type of fishing you're doing for that day. If I know I'm going for pike, or if I'm going for more of a dead stick presentation with lake trout, I'm gonna bring this type of cooler just to store my frozen frozen bait. I know that sounds silly because, you know, if it's -20 out, I don't really need to worry about my bait thawing out. However, if I'm transporting it in the car, I don't really want my car to smell like frozen bait or thawing out fish. And then the other option is if I'm using live minnows, which I typically do. It's a live bait cooler. The reason I like this is I can pair it with an aerator, just mounts on the side, and this aerator plugs in to USB-C, I believe, or USB-A, USB-B, whatever, the USB. It plugs in and it keeps my bait from dying, especially if I'm out there for a few days, or if I'm in the castle doing like a 4-day trip, that bait will start dying out in probably a day or 2 days. Some other accessories that we can talk about, but I don't think they're a necessity. It's really going to depend on how much time you're spending out on the ice. If you're like me and you're going to be out there for a few days at a time, it might be worthwhile to invest in a battery pack, whether that be a Jackery, which is just pretty much a charging bank. This is the Explorer. This is 1,000+. It's a little bit heavy, but it's worth it, especially if I'm running electronics out on the ice. That gives me another anywhere from 12 to 24 hours of battery for my live scope. And if I'm taking out recording equipment, being able to charge batteries continuously, it's a necessity for me. But if you want to charge your phone out on the ice, I think from a safety standpoint, it is good to carry some type of battery with you. And I also have this Dakota Lithium, which houses a 60 amp hour battery, and it's got a built-in inverter on top of that, so I still have AC charging capabilities. Essential gear and clothing is a must-have. So what I recommend is getting a solid bib and a solid top. I always bring a hat, I bring gloves, I bring insulated boots. I bring waterproof boots. Get a nice pair. These are dirty. Don't judge. These are waterproof boots with a pair of ice cleats because you do not want to be slipping out on the ice constantly. I would stray away from the cheaper cleats that are just the little metal pegs because they will break. I would spend another probably $10 and just get these upgraded ice cleats that will actually bite into the ice. I keep saying bad time, like it's a bad time out on the ice, but it's so fantastic. I love it. It's not a bad time. I just, yeah. If you take away anything from this video, get out on the ice. And that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys can take something away from this that will improve your time out on the ice. This channel is all about sharing the adventure. If you guys did like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment. Let me know what you have found to be beneficial. Thanks again for tuning in. Frozen smiles and tight lines. See ya.